lane pressure from the overlord and ruler of this map, the Queen of Spiders. Let's get underway, GL, with the pick and bans for Tomb of the Spider Queen for the final night, or final game of our night of Week 4's Open Division.
Yeah, it's been an interesting night. We've, as I mentioned earlier, we haven't really had the top of the ladder each and every round, but it's been very intriguing to see how some of these teams have been progressing over the course of this Open Division. I'm pleasantly surprised at some of the play that we've been seeing. And we'll talk at the start of the night whether or not some of the drafts would try and replicate a lot of what we see in the Premier Division, and a lot of these teams seem to be on that page where things like the Maev, the Blaze, they're very much going for those very high priority, because they're high priority for a reason. They're pretty damn good.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, the meta is the meta for a reason, and it looks like all of our Open Div teams have been doing their research. They've been doing some scrimming, and that's what we want to see coming out of the Open Div here, GL, is that high-level thought process.
Yeah.
The provision for looking at what's hot, what's not, and picking those real S-class heroes, which we're seeing a lot of. So fantastic work to our Open Div teams for using their thought processes like that and sticking with the meta. Open Div is all about trying new things, but I mean, if you're going with what's tried and tested, why not?
Yeah, and speaking of what's hot and what's not, Blaze, he is very much what's hot, and he's
also not.
Yeah, he's also not, because he's not going to be played in this game, so he's both of those, and very, very much understand why you just do not want to let that go through. But it does allow that Greymane to get that first pick yet again. It is not as the whole the neutral game that Greymane does have over most other heroes that we do see on other maps is not as accentuated here, because there is only the siege giants at the bottom and the two the night camps on either side, and you're not going to get as much value out of that style as you would in other maps. But he is still very powerful. We saw it in the previous game, just what he was able to do. Sure, they didn't win, but his power is still there nonetheless. Whereas on the other side, with Ripple, they pick up the Gul'dan and the Stukov. We saw those two picked up in the previous game to great effect.
Yep, and great effect, as mentioned, on the wave clearing and being able to deal with those bosses, the spiders from quite a distance, and also the boss as well. I mean, if Spectre are able to pick up a cheeky boss play relatively early, or pre-10 or around that 10 mark, they can have some good value with it. But Gul'dan can absolutely poke that down to oblivion, melt it back into its little pile of sand from whence it came, until it is time to be resummoned.
Yeah, and now we're just looking at some of the other high priorities things. Well, at least for this map, things like the Johanna, potentially the Ragnaros, that more of like a flavor pick. You're not necessarily going to highly prioritize it, because there are other things that do bring much more value in a consistent manner. Things like the Johanna, the Tyrael is going to get picked up to accentuate a lot of the Greymane playstyle, and actually the Lunara, a rather interesting one early on in this draft.
Yeah, well, that opens up a whole new world of possibilities, getting into that backline and destroying Gul'dan or Stukov, because, if we take the leap, you got the in, you Q, you W, you leap back out. You can get back out by taking maybe 1 or 2 tower shots and be free and clear. So, interesting pickup there on the side of Spectre, and I'm actually quite enthused to see what they're going to do with it. So, picking up the Tyrael again, they're going to get the Sanct down for Greymane and potentially the Lunara. So, yeah, very, very interesting looking draft here so far.
Yeah, there's some interesting tools to work with, but it's just very interesting to see that Lunara's before the second ban, because you're not really going to be seeing it banned away. There's not really much that you could really pick that would hint towards that style, and it's maybe giving away a little bit too much to the side of Ripple, whereas if you go for something a little bit more standard, like say your support, or even a soul laner, or even your main tank, if that's the way you wanted to go with that Tyrael, maybe it would have given a little bit less over, made it a little bit more flexible in the draft, but looks like they just very much want that Lunara right off, or in that first half of the draft.
And here is a very specific call out for our Open Division teams, GL. You raise a very valid point. Why give away what your DPS mainstay is going to be until last pick, when there's still Malfurion on the map that could have potentially been banned out? Who is a very strong healer. Obviously he didn't get banned out, but if that's something that Ripple wanted to do, and this is the difference that you'll see in the different levels of play and the different maturity of these teams, is this drafting phase. So you get your tanks, you get your supports, then you start trying to filter into your frontliners and your DPS.
Yeah, essentially you set up a core and then you try and play around that with the draft. Like we've been seeing so much of the tanks and just the high priority because you can build around that core set of units. So things like the Tyrael, the Blaze, and your supports, those set like the core, and we're just seeing the differences in DPS depending on how prioritized they are. Things like Tracer can go way up in the priority because strength, but there's also that little bit of a skill cap. So that's probably why we're not really seeing it here. Considering just the level of these teams, probably not as practiced with that hero, but you want that good core in that first half of the draft so you can try and control it as we get past the second round of bans.
Yeah, and I mean, Ripple are doing the right thing in that respect. I mean, there's not terribly much that you can do to counter a Gul'dan or to really sort of hard counter him outside of maybe picking an
Just engage, really.
That's right. It's just going to be the engage. Now, we see Sonya picked up and a Genji banned out. So, again, we're talking to that maturity. We're talking to that high-level thought process that we may not be seeing in some of the open div teams. And Sonya, I believe, is a much higher ban priority than a Genji, especially in the current state of play.
Well, when we're looking at like solo lanes, because prior to the first round or second round of bans, there wasn't really any clear solo laner. Yes, the Tyrael is a potential to go into that role, but he can also just go anywhere, really.
Yeah.
So we're not really seeing too much priority being put on the solo laner just yet. And when we're looking at solo laners, things like the Sonya pop-up, Malthael, the Ragnaros you were mentioning earlier, Blaze, things that were just that are so powerful, and it's not really being touched. So it's like kind of just leave it all open and see what happens, see what falls to the floor.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much what we're seeing here at the moment. Oh, Zagara! I get my wish! We get to see a Zaggy tonight. Probably not the biggest map on the planet to be doing a Zaggy on, but mate, Zagara, I'm enthused to see what Spectre can do with this GL.
It can still work on this map, even though it is much smaller and you're not necessarily splitting up a team as much with any kind of the split push shenanigans that Zagara can do. But because it's a smaller map, you have much more vision of it, because if you're able to efficiently spread around the creep and get vision of that, there's much less area for you to spread over to get full vision. So it is one of the things that you can really look at, and she will be able to potentially bully out a Sonya because of the range versus melee matchup in the solo lane.
She definitely can bully out of Sonya, especially with the correct application of that Hydralisk coming out on the W. So that is a prime example right there, ladies and gents, of what you want to keep in your back pocket. Like if that had first picked Zagara, then Ripple could have absolutely you're gonna get decimated.
You're going to have a rough time if you first pick a Zagara in any state. Right.
And look at this.
Maybe a few years ago if you picked her first pick, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely, GL. Back in the alpha days when she was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But like Thrall making it through the draft to be picked up last by Ripple here, that's testament, right, to the level of strength of characters or heroes rather that we're seeing making it through the draft.
Yeah, one thing I do want to note is that Ripple does have a rather melee heavy composition, so they do want to just like clump up a little bit, especially if. Well, they essentially want Spectre to be clumping up now that they've picked up that Thrall, because they want to, just like we saw in the previous game, they want to be stacking up Corruption, they want to be stacking up Crash Lightning. So they want people to be in close enough proximity so they can get those efficient stacks. And this could go a little bit longer. We saw that combination used in the previous game by Spectre, and they were able to get it to work out with just some explosive team fights. Just have to wait and see how it works for this one.
We'll have to wait and see indeed, GL, as we make our way into the final game of the evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us in the ANZ Open Division for Week 4. This is going to be Ripple Esports versus Spectre. And on the side of Ripple, we've got Burnsy repping the Sonya, Mav on that Thrall, Venom rocking the Stukov, Loke on Johanna, and Lapra on the old Gul'dan.
And on the red side, we have Spectre. VK3 WTF is on the grey main, Aspire G on Zagara, Detour on Tyrael, Gummy on Lunara, and Fighto on the Rhaegar. And one thing I do need to note is that they do not have any CC. We saw a composition very similar to this earlier on tonight, where it was a Tyrael main tank with not much control outside of that. And that can really be a rough composition to be playing unless you're a very coordinated team, and we have to see Spectre really pull out all the stops to get this to work.
Yeah, GL, and look, Twitch chat concurs with us on that point. No hard CC whatsoever on the side of Spectre. They are going to struggle to get kills in this round. Let's see how they do. And we've got Locke just causing a little bit of havoc with Condemn there. And just going to have a sticky beak down at the bot lane, and having Aspire on the Zagara really bullying Burnsy so far on that.
Yeah, and one thing we were talking about when, like, how do you deal with the Gul'dan? You lock him down, make sure he can't get a lot of his spells out. And also, when you look at Sonya, if she's spinning to winning, if she's getting all that healing from the whirlwind, how do you stop that? You lock her down with CC. When you don't have any CC on your team, that's going to be a little bit more difficult to do.
I think the most CC that they're going to have is a Devouring Maw from Zagara if she takes that at 10. Or
a Judgment.
Or Judgment. That's a hard CC.
Yeah,
the only other thing they're going to have is an Earthbind Totem.
Yeah, they have the slowing totem, which is going to do a rather soft CC, but it's not going to be interrupting what Ripple are want to be doing. And because, like, right now, what we're seeing right now is just the wave clear domination that Ripple had. They had the Gul'dan, they had the Johanna, two heroes who were very much prioritized on this map for their wave clear. And we're seeing why. They just had so much priority in these rotations, it allows them to be the first to the punch and just keep ahead of the game.
Yeah, we're seeing Locke on that Johanna constantly interrupting the rotations of Spectre, which is just such a smart move. It's allowing the rest of Ripple to really clear out that mid lane, transition to top, clear that out, swap back to mid, clear that out, whilst interrupting those rotations of Spectre and, you know, delaying their experience gain. But with the value that Zagara's been getting down in bottom, they're actually ahead of XP, which is really interesting.
Yeah, it's actually forced Mav down on that Thrall to that bottom lane, trying to at least mitigate some of that pressure. And it's actually going to allow Burnsy to try and go for this camp on the bottom side, so they have a little bit of pressure. But because they've brought Thrall down to that lane in the bottom, it's allowing the rest of Spectre to be much more aggressive in the mid and top because they had that man advantage.
And now they're sending Greymane down to deal with the Thrall at the same time. So Thrall's just going to waltz on out of there after throwing that wolf out and trapping the Greymane. They're sniffing out what this Sonya's onto, though. So this is going to be a little two-man fracas here. And Mav goes down on the Thrall, suffering a lot of damage at the hands of WTF on that Greymane. But Sonya just hangs behind, picks up that siege camp, and off they go.
Yeah, it was a very interesting play. I mean, they probably telegraphed that a little bit too much, realizing that, hey, the Thrall is down here holding the lane while the Sonya is all of a sudden not there. I wonder what is happening. So it was a very good play to bring the Greymane down to make the play, and they were able to clean out that camp rather efficiently, so they're not really losing out in that regard. But because, yet again, because they've brought someone down, the matchup between mid and top has gone back in favor of the wave clear, essentially.
So, the experience gain is still there. There's slight, maybe a quarter of a level in front there for Spectre. And Ripple looks like they're going to start challenging this by going for an engage onto WTF on that Greymane. He is going to try and dive that backline onto Lapra, but he's going to go down to the Johanna, to the Thrall damage. And Spectre are just going to have to go back and lick their wounds.
Yeah, we're looking at those areas where they're fighting, and because there's no minions there, it's making it so much easier for Thrall to stack up that Crash Lightning. We're already up to 10 stacks, and it really starts to pack a punch, regardless of if you get to that 29. It will hurt if you manage to get hit by those Crash Lightning hits. And we're seeing them, just because of that really good fight coming out for them, around the amount of lockdown, the amount of damage that they're able to pump out, it gives them the advantage. They're able to get that first Web Weaver, and from there we can see them start to extend this lead just a little bit more, maybe set up for a potential back-to-back turn-in.
Yeah, and we see the majority of the gems sitting with Aspire down on that Zagara. Still punishing Burnsy on the Sonya, not getting as much value now though, as we see the XP starting to equalize out. So interesting that we're seeing Burnsy lose this quite so heavily. Looking back up at the top here though, we've got a very, very heavy amount of siege here with Loke just pushing everyone away from that wall. Stukov with that pool of silence, just not letting Spectre get in there to try and deal with these web weavers. So maximizing the value in this top lane, GL. Very smart play here by Ripple.
Yeah, this is what you want to be getting from these first web weaver phases. Just try and just put down as much of those early towers down as you can. Just expand that experience, and that's what we're seeing. Just not necessarily going too far forward, but they're actually going to play very aggressive. They want this
corruption damage, GL.
Yeah, it's
already on 27 stacks. He's just Lapra is punishing Spectre at the moment. Took all of the members of Spectre down to half health.
Yeah, and also that because they were able to drop those members down so very low, they were able to secure that fort on the top side. Looks like they're going to be able to see
Gara 2 GL,
that's
28
about
gems gone.
Wow, that is massive, and that's going to really put a dent into the plays of Spectre because they're not able to get that turn in on the back foot. So Fighter's actually going to get locked down. They're trying to get him out of there. The corruption?
Oh, he's gone. Corruption takes Fighto down. No more heals for the next 20 seconds for Spectre. Unlucky there, Puppy Rhaegar. Now,
yeah, because of those extra
rotations.
Those extra kills, given the extra structures, is giving level 10 over to the side of Ripple, and they're in a brilliant position right now, and they're playing it so very cleanly right now.
They're just catching Spectre out, unfortunately. Zagara, no idea why she was transitioning from that bot lane up to the middle there. Probably trying to kill the web weaver, but just gets caught right behind that Merc camp. And then we see Rhaegar trying to come out to do something about that, but little Papa goes down. This is going to be almost a back-to-back turn-in. We see Detour trying to get his 23 gems out. They've got enough for a turn-in here, GL, but they need to be tactical about how they do it. And this is going to be the way that they can come back into this game. But they are a full 2 levels down, almost, and haven't got their heroics online yet.
Yeah, I think Spectre just have to play it much more defensively because they are so far behind. They want to get a fight, but they are down heroics and they can't do this.
The combination there, the pull, the blessed shield, the thrall, sundering, destroying the Rhaegar once again.
Brilliant.
Material falls, the fear onto the Greymane. Kaboom! Ripple are taking it to Spectre.
That was not the play for Spectre to make. They wanted to try and get that turn in, as you mentioned, but they had tools to just mitigate some of those losses. You just have to play defensively, get your level 10s, and just absorb as much pressure as you can, and then just wait for that one opportunity where you can get that comeback. And if you're able to play defensively efficiently enough, we've seen it from the top teams, not only here in ANZ, but also throughout the world. If you're able to play defensively well enough and hold on to your gems, just hold them, sure, you might hit over 100 gems for your team. If you manage to get one, you can then transition that into a second or even a third, considering depending on how the map is going. But because they got a little bit impatient trying to make a play, they got burned for it, and they're gonna pay for it a fair bit with a boss and also another web weaver phase.
Boss and a turn in GL. This is almost game-winning stuff right here, except for the fact that it's an 8-minute boss. So already down to that half health mode. Not going to be too much value here, but the web weavers will certainly help them get this keep, and that's what Ripple's going to be going for right now, is this keep. Loke is taking a little bit of damage, and so is Mav coming back. Blessed shield goes out. 4-man condemn. The fear. Rhaegar, sundered again, goes down and blows up. Devouring Maw comes out, trapping Sonya and Johanna. Opening up a potential opportunity here for Spectre, but no. We've got Detour backing it out. Loke on that. Johanna nearly goes down. The sanctification does not do enough to save Greymane. Is he going to go down to corruption damage? He does! Wow!
And in the end, it's just going to be 2 kills going over to the side of Ripple. I mean, that's what we were looking at the end of the draft. No CC to lock down those targets, and they can't finish anyone off. Sure, they have a reasonable amount of damage with the Greymane, the Lunara, and also the Zagara is able to pump out some damage, but they're just not able to secure anything at this point. And because they're so far behind, they're finding it very hard to get those pick-offs right now, and they're just getting punished left, right, and center.
Unfortunately for Spectre, the lack of lockdown, lack of CC is just punishing them right now. The damage coming out from the Thrall and the Gul'dan, I mean, we're seeing, Echo Corruption's completed. Chain Lightning is now over 20 stacks, so we're seeing a lot of damage prioritized to those heroes. The Sunders have been on point. The Fears have been 4 or 5 man every time. Not looking good for Spectre, GL.
Ooh, look at that damage. They just locked in the great Horrify, and that's Lunara down, and that is a lot of their long-range damage just not there. And we look at the corruption damage, it's demolishing.
Corruption. Ancestral goes onto the Zagara, but it's not going to do that much value, unfortunately. 3-man, a little more there. We've got the leap onto the Greymane. He goes down. Rhaegar gets popped. They're chasing Zagara. They're chasing Detour. This is going to be a keep and potentially a win condition game. Well, an end of the game right here.
They want to try and end this very cleanly and very efficiently, and they're doing a good job of it. But because it's so early in this game, the death timers are just not long enough for them to confidently walk their way onto that core. So they're just going to back away for just a little bit. They don't have nearly enough for another turn in, but they're just going to keep on GL. They just want to get these kills, and they have the tools to do so.
Zagara almost gets popped. We're seeing a 4-level difference right here at the moment, GL, and this is astronomical. This keep is going to go down. That's 3 lanes of pressure in 11 minutes going over to Ripple. The Thrall Chain lightning damage is just astounding at the minute. We get Greymane locked down by that wolf. Silence, pulled back. Bless Shield goes down, gets caught. Sanctification's out, saving the Tyrael and the Rhaegar, but Rhaegar falls anyway. Zagara running the wrong way. Aspire is going to get popped. We've got 3 catapults in the top lane. Lapra putting out all that damage on the core. This is game, GL.
Yeah, that is a very clean and efficient way of ending the game there from Ripple. They just found their advantages early on, and they just pushed it to the maximum.
Well, Ripple certainly establishing a truckload of dominance over Spectre right now. However, this gives Spectre something to go away and lick their wounds with and go, all right, well, maybe we shouldn't go into a draft or into a game against our open div counterparts with no CC. So, whilst defeat can be bitter, it can also be a great experience to learn from, GL.
Yeah, every game, whether or not it's a win or loss, there's always something to learn, whether or not it's in the draft or in your gameplay. As I mentioned, there's always something to learn, and I think the big point that they really should be looking at is that attempt to come in onto the point when they were not level 10, whereas on this side of Ripple they already had heroics. It was rather impatient. They didn't have tools to work with to go in there, and there was no way that was gonna end well.
No, unfortunately for Spectre, they just got outdrafted and outplayed very hard in this game. They did play, they played as well as they could. They tried, they braved, they dropped Sanctifications down, but at the end of the day, it was not enough. And Ripple take the win in a convincing manner in about 11.5 minutes.
Yeah, it was a bit of a quick one. So I think that is going to be the end of the night. We do have a couple of things that we need to discuss. I mean, the one thing I'm just getting a message from Blank right now is that there will not be any open division next week because there is a week break. So we will not be next week. There won't be any ANZ HGC next week because that break does extend to that as well. But we will be back the following week for more HGC, ANZ HGC and open division action on the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
We will indeed, GL. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this evening's games. We'll see you in a fortnight's time. GL, thank you for letting me steal you from Premier Division again to be my side man.
It's always fun.
I love a bit of a man on the side. It's good. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
That's the best way to close it out now.
Winters loves a bit of a man on the side. Take it easy.